Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, Customer Service in Higher Education, a Values Approach. Then, of course, if you're joining us from the East Coast, good afternoon. We're very happy to have you join us today. I always like to see who is attending, so if you don't mind just letting us know where you're from and who you are in our chat, we will be we'll greatly appreciate that. So looks like you all are coming in. We'll get started here in just a second. And while you're coming in, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker for today. We have our very own Mr. Steve Smith. Steve is the Director of Higher Education Services at Trellis and Trellis Strategies. He has worked in higher education for over 30 years. He was an academic program administrator and financial aid officer at the City of University of New York. Later, he worked in public relations, policy, and regulatory affairs, and strategic planning at Texas Guaranteed. So thank you so much, Steve, for joining us. This webinar will be recorded. I will send the webinar out to everyone as soon as it is available. I also want to let you know that there is a short survey at the end. So if you will complete that survey, we will be happy for that as well. So come on in and have a seat, and we'll get started here in just a second. Again, today's webinar is Customer Service in Higher Education, a Values Approach. This webinar addresses a key issue facing higher education, how to develop a service-oriented relationship with our students that is sustainable over time and fosters greater student success. This session will offer 5 simple and easy to follow customer service principles for improved customer service. And I know a lot of you have been asking for this webinar, as we can see, because we have a lot of you in attendance today. So again, welcome. So without further ado, it looks like we got quite a few in the room. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Steve.
Thank you so much, Teresa, and welcome to all of our guests who are attending today on this important topic. You know, when we talk about higher education, we talk about student success. How we treat the students makes a big difference in whether they start and whether they stay and whether they graduate. And that's why we're talking about customer service in higher education. But the reason we're talking about it as a values approach is because I'm not going to give you a list of prescriptions, rules, edicts to follow. I'm going to talk about the ways to think about customer service. What is the student expecting? What are they thinking? What are we thinking? How does that relationship productive? So this is not one of those presentations where I'm going to say smile while you're talking on the phone, or maybe some of the things you've heard in other customer service trainings you've attended. I'm going to be talking about things that are usable in a variety of situations in dealing with students, because they're going to really focus on the value behind student customer service. All right, so a little bit about us. We are Trellis Strategies, Trellis Company, and Trellis Strategies. Trellis Strategies is our research and consulting arm, and we do work in enrollment management, workforce to education, student customer experience, all from a perspective of qualitative data and consulting. So that is us, Trellis Strategies, and Trellis Company, our legacy organization that has been working in the higher education space for over 40 years. So what do we mean by customer service? We're going to talk about that first. We're going to talk about a few special challenges that we face with this topic. Then I'm going to leave you with 5 very easy ways to think about customer service with students. 5 very easy ways. And I'll talk about it. It's not just students. We're talking about other customers as well, but students will be the main customer, but not just students. And then we'll talk about sustaining it. Okay, so first of all, when we talk about customer service in higher education, I would like you to reflect on your own experience with customer service. You know, think about when you go out and about to any place that's open to the public, whether it be a doctor's office, a restaurant, a retailer, a bank, another college, any place you go where they're open to the public. You know, what is your experience in making things happen there and getting what you expect there? Where have you seen good stuff and where have you seen bad stuff? I've done this discussion with a lot of colleges, and people tell me their experience of good customer service and bad customer service in all kinds of different situations. So, in the chat, we'll just spend like 2-3 minutes on this. If you have a example of where you've seen good customer service in your own personal life, don't mention the college just yet. Let's talk about your own personal life. Put it in the chat. I'd like to see what some of the ideas. Where have you seen examples of good customer service? Okay. Dr. Russell says Chick-fil-A. All right, Dr. Russell, maybe just put a couple extra points. What is about Chick-fil-A that's such a good service? Others, where have you seen examples of good customer service? Okay. Ms. Westry, my credit union. Again, tell me, what HEB Grocery, an example from Texas. So when you're thinking about these, and Aldi, okay, another one, another grocery store. So this is interesting. What makes them good? Tell me, put a couple lines. What is about these places that makes the service good? We know it when we see it. Caring, okay. We have, caring, a simple concept. Okay, Disney is another example of good customer service. Now, what makes it? What is it about the places that makes them work? Okay, Ms. Westry, cater to my needs and made the service seamless. Okay, another one from Dr. Russell. Customer is the priority. Attentive. They make you feel valued. Okay, listen, these are examples. Simple things. Simple things. You go in. They pay attention to you. They make you feel like your time is worth their time, and then you get the job done. It's simple stuff that we relate to. We need to remember it because it's going to translate to our students too. Now, let's talk about the bad. Sometimes it's no good. Sometimes the service we encounter is not up to what we want or expect. Who's got an example of the bad? Put it into the chat. Tell me, example of where you've seen bad service and why. Give me an example of where you've seen bad service and why. And we'll take a couple of those ideas as well. Okay. Here's one from Dr. Rosa. Places no attention to detail. Lack of training. Okay. Rushing. That's really insightful. No attention to detail. So think of the opposite. When you gave a good customer service, they were attentive to my needs. They paid attention to me. I was their first priority. And then when we have the bad, places that rush, okay, don't make you feel heard. Staff on the phone. Okay, staff on the phone. I think no knowledge of the product. Self-checkout. Okay, Walmart, self-checkout and needed help, and I was ignored. Okay, so just, it's simple stuff. It's the opposite of what we just talked about in the good. In the good, they pay attention to me. They make it seem like my time is valuable, and not seem like it. It is valuable to them. They're pay attention to me. My time is their time. That's where we experience the good. And the bad, they're not paying attention to me. They're trying to get rid of me as fast as possible. They don't even understand their own service level. Maybe lack of training. They don't understand their own product. So they're not answering my questions. I went in there for a reason, to get something from them, and they don't know what it's about. Frustrating. But here's the thing. The way these simple things make us feel are the same things that our students are feeling. Same exact stuff. So we got to think, we got to relate. First of all, how does it make us feel? How do we relate to these things? And then we translate that back to the college. Okay. So I talked about the student being a customer. Obviously, we're set up as colleges and universities to serve people looking for higher education, get a credential, get that knowledge. That's a student. So that is our primary customer. But we have other customers too. We have the students' parents. We have members of the public sometimes that come to our campus for various things. Research subjects. We have members of the government agencies are kind of our customer because we interact with them too. Internally, we are customers of each other. If you work in a university, or college, you're dealing with other staff or other faculty, you're customers of each other because you have to serve each other to get the job done also. So it's not just students. The student is the end user, but we have other customers. So anytime I'm talking about customer, I mean all of these. And sometimes I will say student, but I mean really anybody that we need to interact with at this productive level. And we're going to talk about what that means. Now, for those of you who want to hear, what does the research on this topic say? Well, there isn't a lot, but I will tell you this. Most of the research points to this simple fact. Students are here by choice. They're not compelled to attend. They're here by choice. They are paying for it by choice. We need them to make the decision to come to our college. That's the reason we are a college, is because they're our customer. We need a student to be there. So it is critical that we, whether we call them customers or we call them students, it doesn't really matter. They are a customer because they are coming to us by choice. And we need to recognize that when anytime anybody makes a choice to do it or not do it, to come see us about getting what we have to offer, they are a customer. And we have to make that relationship work for that customer. They're not compelled to come to us. They come to us purely by choice. And as such, we need to make it worth their time, worth their while, because we need them. That's why we're there. Okay. But here's the thing. In most higher ed, we don't have a great tradition of treating students as customers. We have treated them mostly almost in a quasi-governmental relationship, whereas we build it, you come. If you can figure it out, you can get it done. Otherwise, we'll see you later. I mean, unfortunately, the sad fact is we have built much of our service levels over time on the idea that the student needs to navigate it for him or herself, much in the same way that a government service works, where it is built for access, but you often have to, you have to figure it out for yourself on how to make it work for you. Well, most successful private businesses know that you don't make your customer do the hard work. You do the hard work so that they don't have to. Well, unfortunately, in colleges, we have not had that tradition. We've had a tradition of sending them here to this office, this office, this office. They have to do it on their own. Well, we need to change that because, as the research also shows, if they leave us, we're not fulfilling our mission. And sometimes, we're losing important tuition revenue, which we need to keep our college viable. So we have to level with this fact. The student is a customer. We don't have a great tradition. So what do we do about it? Okay. So what is it? When I say customer service, what do I mean? All right. Number one, delivering on our promise. Every place that's open to the public makes a promise. When you come here, this is what you're going to get. This is what you can expect. Think about it. Why are they there? And what makes them different? So not every place is the same. Okay? Think of some very simple examples. A bank or a credit union. Both of them do a very, very similar type of work. They hold your money in trust and manage the expenditure of it so that you're not walking around with your own cash. They manage it for you. Okay. That's the job they do. But the promise they make is quite different. A big multinational bank with branches all over the world has a different value proposition than your local credit union. They're both doing similar transactions. They're taking your paycheck, keeping a record of it, and helping you manage your expenditures around it. But their promise of what they give you is not the same. That big multinational bank with branches all over the world is not the exact same promise. Here's what you can expect from us as that credit union that has 4 branches in your hometown. Even though their product looks very similar, their promise is not the same. Same is going to go for colleges. We'll talk about that. Helping students can't get what they came for. They came to us for a reason. They chose us. So we want them to be successful. That's what customer service is, without shifting our burdens to them. And what I mean by that is, when you gave me the examples of the good, you talked about those places that make it, they're attentive, they get you the job done for you without any burden on you. You don't have to figure out who to talk to. You don't have to figure out how to make it work for you. They deliver what they promised without burdening you with it. But those places that are not successful, they make you figure it out, or they tell you about it. There was an example earlier in the chat about a good customer service business, Chick-fil-A. So Chick-fil-A is a restaurant. They do similar work to many other types of fast food restaurants, but they have a very strong customer service ethos and culture. Now, I guarantee you the people working at Chick-fil-A, sometimes they call out sick. Sometimes the machines, the deep fryers, the soda machines don't work at Chick-fil-A. Sometimes their system is down. Sometimes something's not working behind the scenes, but they don't tell you about it. In the line, they don't say, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that because of this, and they don't shift their burden to you. They manage it so that you stay out of it and you keep going. Okay. Us working together behind the scenes when there's no students around, that's an important part. And it's a good memory for us and the student. Now, what do I not mean? It's important to distinguish what we don't mean. The customer's always right. Have you heard that term? I did. I grew up, we had a store in a small town when I was a kid, and we always said the customer's always right. And it's a helpful thing to say, but it's not really true because the customer is not always right. Sometimes they are wrong about things, but that isn't really have anything to do with customer service. Are we delivering on our promise? That is what customer service is about, not pretending the customer's right or, when they're not. Are we delivering on our promise? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. We're never lowering our standards to accommodate the student. So if you're a faculty member, you may think, you know what? Customer service isn't for me. The student doesn't know what he or she is talking about yet because they haven't been through the lessons. So I'm not going to start accommodating the student's desires and requests. I'm the expert and they need to go through the material. Well, of course, that is the standard. That's the product. That's what they're paying tuition for. They're paying tuition for the fact that our faculty have superior knowledge to them, and that knowledge transfer is the product. We're not lowering our standards ever. Now, what we are doing is making sure that the standard that what we deliver as promised. Okay? But we're not lowering our standard. Customer service isn't about measurement. We are going to measure it. Is it working or not working? But it's not, the goal is not measurement. The goal is not commercialization. The goal is to give the student what we promised. And customer service is never about making exceptions that aren't justified. Sometimes exceptions are necessary because they fit within our values. Not everything works perfectly in the world of humans, but sometimes we have to make exceptions to make things fit. But we aren't doing it just because we're taking a shortcut. We're tired of people yelling at us. That's not why we make exceptions. We make exceptions because exceptions are justified. How do I know if an exception is good? I'm willing to tell anybody who asks, I made this exception for this reason. I made it for you. I cannot make it for you, and here's why. And I feel good about that because it's justified. Okay. Why is it important? Helps students stay in school, helps them understand what's going on, delivers on our promise, and if for no other reason, it makes your own job easier. Think of those places where they have a reputation for world-class customer service. I guarantee you the people who work in those businesses or those places enjoy working there more than places where the customer service is not very good. It's just easier to be around it. It's easier for the customer. It's easier for the employees. It's easier for everyone when the customer service culture works. Okay? Now, let's talk about a few challenges. Here's one that I always am very, very surprised by and concerned about. This survey was done a couple of years ago, and what it identified is that when it comes to asking for help, most students don't ask for the help they need. Only 1 in 5 ask for the actual help they need. Now, why is that? Think about why don't the student ask for the help they need? Second thing is, only half the students who are asking know who to ask. Scared. Exactly. That's a good. That's scared. Yes, they don't. They're afraid to ask. Why are they scared? Why don't people ask for the help they need? You know, so put it in the chat. Let's hear some other ideas. Scared is one thing. Okay, the student is afraid. They're intimidated, afraid of being judged, afraid it's a dumb question. Sometimes because of the stigma around it, then people will know you need help. And you can't do it on your own. So they're embarrassed. They feel, oh, it lessens who I am if I ask for that help. Bad previous experience. There you go. They don't want others to think they don't know what's happening. They're unaware of the questions that they need to ask. Fear of being blamed for the issue they're experiencing. You know what? All these things, they're afraid to ask. They're afraid of being judged. They're afraid of being blamed. Maybe they think other people need the help more than they need it. Or their past experience was negative. The truth is, you know whose fault that is? Us. As college administrators, if we have a culture where people are intimidated or afraid to ask for help, that is on us. We need to have a culture where they are happy to ask for help because it's a good experience. They're not judged. They get it. They don't feel it's less. They're not less than for asking for help. They're more than. That's on us. I guarantee you go to a place like Disney and you ask for help, you don't feel stupid asking for help. They're happy to help you. Can we do that? Yes. And half the students don't know who to ask. That's on us too. They shouldn't need to know who to ask. We all work at the school. If they ask us, we'll help them. It's important, okay? Another thing about students, a lot of students are still going through anxiety. This is from Trellis, our own research, our student financial wellness survey. We've begun asking questions about student mental health, and it's not very good. A lot of students are really experiencing a lot of mental health issues. So back to the help, they need help. They're intimidated. They're at high risk of leaving if things don't work well because they're already on thin edge. So we need to keep that in mind. It's, the old way of, we build it and they will come. They figure it out for themselves. It's on them. They're adults now. Forget all that. They're our customers. They need our help. They're intimidated and they're maybe not even in a good state of their own. So we need to lift them up. American higher ed, the confidence in American higher ed continues to go down. Very scary. Look at this Gallup poll. In 2015, nearly 60% of Americans had a high trust in higher ed. 3 years later, below 50%. And just this year, below 40%. Down, 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 it keeps going. We've got a lot to do in higher ed, keeping that confidence up. Some of this has to do with a lot of other factors, not just customer service. I understand that. But how we treat people is one thing that we can control. Some things we can't control. But one thing we can control is how we treat people. So let's start there. Let's talk about your campus. Okay, here's a quick test. You've seen some of these things happen? A lot of students want to talk to the president. There's a line at the president's office. That's the number one sign that customer service isn't working. Talking to the boss. Now, some people, that's their first move. They moved into the dorm. They didn't get the assignment they like. They want to talk to the president. But that's not most people. Most people don't want to have to look for the store supervisor, the executive. The jump to the CEO president was much increased where I work. Yeah, that's a bad sign because most people, you could think of yourself, you go somewhere, things aren't working. You talk to the staff, they can't help you. They don't want to help you. So next thing you know, you have to say, let me talk to your supervisor. Do you really want to spend time on all that stuff? Or you just want to get the job done and move on with your life? Big line at the president's office, bad move. And I know your president says my door is always open. I get it. But that's not the same thing as they need to go talk to the president. Because the president can't solve those little operational problems. All she or he can do is send them back and say, let's get this fixed. Student parents shouldn't have to make that jump. Those things should be fixed before the president even hears about it. All right. How many of you said this? Everything would be great if the students would just read our instructions. We sent the instructions, they're all in the email. Just read. Have you ever said that? Well, think about it. We like to say this. We like to say that we've sent the instructions. That again, that's back to the old thing of like, it's on you to figure it out, student. If we create instructions and most people are following them, great, then our instructions are working. But if we send instructions and we have lots and lots of people confused by it, whose problem is that? Is it the student reading it? Or is it the way we wrote it? Or how about this one? We sent it out and no one read it. Whose fault is that? Is it the student's job to figure out to open email? If students don't use email, don't send it by email. Unfortunately, we have to meet the student where she or he is. We can't, if the students don't comply with things, there's only so much we can do to force compliance. We have to meet them where they're at. But sticking to that gun, that old thing of like, well, we told them and they didn't follow. Well, as they're walking out the door, we don't have much recourse on that. Okay. Great students leaving and not returning. We don't know why. Well, could be some good reasons. They may not be getting heard or service. Schools tell me all the time, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing these great things for students, but the students don't know about it. You know what? One thing that a sign of a big problem is what we think is going on and what the students think is going on is not the same thing. We're out of touch with our students. If the faculty and staff don't work behind the scenes together, you cannot have good service. And if students never ask for help, go back to our previous slide. If students never ask for help, consider that a bad sign. Students should want to ask for help. Ask for that help. They're asking for help. Consider that, wow, the trust is there. So what's our promise? Remember, delivering on your promise is the critical first step. When you get here, this is what you're going to get. So different schools. Look, all schools teach English 101, Psychology 102, Math 104. Every school teaches it. That's not the promise. So sometimes people say, what's our promise? A great education. A great education is your baseline. What is it about you that they come for? Again, back to my credit union example. Both the multinational bank and the local credit union can take your paycheck and help you write checks, give you a debit card. They both do that work. But what makes them different? What makes one's the promise different than the other? They have different promises they make, different reasons people use them, different reasons people come. People judge you by that. Why do you choose the multinational bank versus the credit union? Well, I want a branch. I chose the multinational bank because I travel a lot. I want ATMs worldwide. Okay. They can do that. I want, when I walk into my bank, for those people to know my name, my kid's name, my cousin's names. They remember the last time I visited. It's a very, very intimate experience. Okay. The credit union, right? Both of them are taking your money, giving you a debit card, giving you a checkbook. That's not the product. The product is something different, and our colleges have the same thing. They don't come to us for the same reasons, but they are going to be asking themselves, is that what's happening here? Because if you go into your credit union and they treat you like the multinational bank, well, that promise is now broken. All right? So you got to think about it. Why are they coming? 5 principles. Let's talk about them. They're easy. Okay? I was a president of a small college. I dealt with faculty, staff, students, everything. And over and over and over again, I found that these 5 simple things create productive relationship. I have taught this training at over 50 colleges. Over 130 times at over 50 different colleges. I've done this training and people tell me it works. They're easy. I'll go through all of them and then I'll explain what each one of them means. Number 1, follow your own rules. Number 2, if a student comes to you, own it. Number 3, don't be afraid to say no. Caveat, no has to be the only answer. Number 4, don't match emotions with a student. And number 5, oh, it sounds so easy to say it. But in reality, it's kind of hard. See what the student sees. All right, let's go through them one by one. Follow your own rules. Now, what is a rule? Now, when we think of rules, we automatically think of the prescriptive rule, the residence hall rules. No pets, no overnight guests. Okay, those are prescriptive rules. But really, what is a rule? Anything we say, this is how we do it at our college, that's a rule. You create rules so that people know what to do at your college. Anything we say, this is how it works. Course calendar, that's a rule. Direction signs, that's a rule. Hours of operation, that's a rule. Phone numbers, that's a rule. Forms you have people fill out, that's a rule. Course syllabus, that's a rule. Anything we say, this is how we do it at our college, is a rule, because otherwise, how would the student know how to go through your college if you didn't say, this is how it works? This is what we do. The problem always comes down in any situation where we say, this is how it works, and then we don't do it that way ourselves. So let me give you an example of this. Earlier in the, when I was talking about your own personal experience of good and bad customer service, someone mentioned a retailer where the checkout line was a frustration. So I've heard this before from the training sessions of many that I've done with colleges. They tell me they go to a big, large box retailer, and there are 50 checkout stations at the front, but only one of them is open. So what is the problem with that from a customer service perspective? What fundamentally is the problem with this issue? This is an example of not following your own rule, because when you are that store and you set up 50 places to check out, you are telling your customer, look at all these ways that we're going to conveniently get you out of this store and on your way back to your own life. 50 checkout stations. But when we only open one of them, we are breaking our own rule because we have set up the rule that says this. Now, there's go to another retailer where all they ever had was one checkout station. Well, you're not complaining there because they have not built an expectation that anything is different. They have one checkout station. They always had one checkout station. You're going to wait in the line until you leave because that's what they said they're going to do. The problem of the other one is not the fact that they only have one checkout station open. Honestly, the customer is not judging that. What they are judging is, you told me through your rule that it's going to be something else. And we have to remember this in our own college when we set up, this is what you can expect to get done, or this is how it works. And then we don't do it that way ourselves. So for example, do you ever publish a phone number that says, for assistance, call this number? But no one answers that phone. No one's ever in that office. It's always closed. Yet we publish that number. This is how you get help. Call that number. But no one's ever there. Do you have that at your college? What if you're a faculty member and you say, my office hours are 10 a.m. on Tuesday, but you don't ever go to your office because you don't really feel like it, or you got something else to do, or you've taken a different meeting. So 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the student comes and the office is closed. Doors locked. No one's there. There's two ways to solve these problems. I just give you two examples from the college: the phone number that nobody answers and the faculty member who's not in her or his office at the office hour. Two ways to fix it. What are they? One, answer that phone. Fix number one for that phone number. We published it. For assistance, call this number. Fix number one is answer that phone. Faculty member, fix number one, be there Tuesday at 10 a.m. Fix number two, stop telling them to call that number. Or tell them when you actually are going to be there. Really? My office hours are 7 p.m. on Friday nights. If that's when you're actually going to be there, say that. Most customers don't really care that much what your rule is. What they care is that once you say this is how it works, that is how it actually works. So follow your own rules. Now, number 2, remember, students don't ask for the help they need. We need to make it easy for students to get what they need by not sending them around, not pointing to it's not me, it's them. If they come to you, it's yours. Now, granted, it may not be your department. It may not be what you do, but the student doesn't know. They come in, we all work at the college. They go looking for help. They'll ask anybody for anything. Maybe you work in an office where let's say you work in the financial aid office at your college. You're working on Pell Grants and FAFSA and all that stuff, but the students start talking to you about their dorm problems and things like that. Have you ever had that experience? Well, that's an example. They know you, they trust you, they're there. So they're talking to you. Yeah, comment, take the extra time to find out the answers. Listen to them. That's exactly right. Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. It's yours. Listen. Maybe you can't fix it, but you can listen and you can take them on the journey. Because remember, they don't know our org chart. They don't care about it. It's like you go into that big retailer and they got the uniform on, you'll ask them for help. You don't want to hear, well, that's not my department. That's over there, over here, over there. And they send you on that journey that you have to figure it out. Don't do that. You take them on the journey, even if you can't fix it. That financial aid officer cannot fix that dorm problem, but she can take the student on that journey to get that answer fixed. That's customer service. Listen, exactly what Denise Vaughn said in the text. Take the extra time to find out, listen, and then take the student on that journey. And then to say, you know what, I'm handing you off to my colleague now, but if you still don't get the help you need, you come back and see me. Now, sometimes we have to say no to people. It's absolutely okay to say no to people if no is the answer. No is sometimes the answer. But customers of all type can tell the difference between a real no and a fake no. I know you have had this experience. I certainly have had this experience. You go somewhere, you ask for help, and you start hearing the word no or a variation of the word. But you know it's not real. You know that when they're saying no to you, it's not a real answer. It's an evasive answer. It's a way of getting you, move you along. It's a way it's not true. And so what you're doing next is you're looking for the supervisor, you're looking for the president, because you know it's a fake no. If no is the truth, you can say no to people. It is not against service to say no to people when no is true. But it is against service to say no to people when no is fake. And we have to distinguish, am I saying no because no is the truth, or am I saying no just because, I don't know the answer myself? I don't feel like looking for the answer. The bureaucracy here is so deep, I'm not going to get the answer. So why don't I just say no and move this along, and then I don't have to deal with it? Well, customers can tell the difference. So we have to put the energy in. If no is not the only answer, put that energy in, say, let me figure this out. And you don't have to be immediate. Can I have this? Can I have that? You don't have to say right on the spot an answer. I don't know. Let me look into it. And if I come back tomorrow and the answer is no, fine. The student now knows that you have given a genuine attempt to find the truth, and no is the truth. Most people will accept no if it's true, but people will never accept no if it's fake. So be very, very much on the lookout for this common customer service issue. Now, this one is just a don't do, but the reason I put it here is because as human beings, we are very, very vulnerable to this, which is matching emotions of others, especially negative emotion. They come to us upset, confused, accusatory. They're blaming us for stuff, and we start defending, matching. They're angry, we get angry. They get loud, we get a little louder, because we're used to it. This is how we interact with people in our personal lives, or as we're driving through the crazy traffic where we live and people honk at us, we honk back at them. We match emotions with people. But when we do this with a student or the parent, it's a mistake, because now instead of working their problem, owning it, figuring out what to do. We're just going into an interpersonal battle to see who can win. They start accusing us, we start arguing back. They start yelling at us, we start yelling back. It's just a battle to see who can win. Okay? That is a mistake because that's not why we're there. We're there to solve problems. Don't let the students' negative emotion, even their accusations, I know they maybe come out. Every time I come in here, you lose the form, you lose the paper, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're talking about, you don't call me back. Oh, in our instinct, you didn't turn it in on the right day. I did call you back. Look on my CRM. I can show you the day I called you. We start defending. The second we're in that answering their accusations, we turn control over to them. Do not turn control over to the student. Your job is to remain in control and solve problems. Don't let them control the conversation. So what if they're mad? Work the problem. You made a mistake. You guys always do the wrong thing. Work the problem. Let the student's emotion stay out of it. Pretty soon, the student will be matching your emotion because she or he will see that, hey, this is a person who's here to help me get the job done. And, if they simply cannot calm down, that's a time to let someone else try or say, let's do this tomorrow when we can get this job done. But most of the time, when you start listening, not arguing, not responding, listening to what's going on and working it and owning it, this issue goes away. And finally, we all work at the college. We know how things work. We wrote these instructions. We developed these forms. I wrote this syllabus. I wrote this website. We know how it works. So it's very hard for us sometimes to see the very, very simple things that students see or don't see about our college. And so we have to constantly think, what is the student seeing here? And it's usually much, much simpler than what we think it is. So we have to constantly put ourselves in the instruction. Is what I'm saying make sense to the student? What are they hearing? Get rid of the jargon. Get rid of the office names, the acronyms. Get rid of all that stuff. Use plain, simple words to explain what's happening to people. I used to be the president of a college, and sometimes the faculty would come to me and say, Steve, the student has put some work in their paper that is just directly off the internet. This is plagiarism. This is academic dishonesty. Therefore, the student needs to be expelled. So sometimes I'd hear things like that. And I'd say, okay, well, it is academic dishonesty. That is true. It's against our policy. But what does the student see? From the student's perspective, what is this? Is this just cheating? Or is this really another problem, which is we told the student, you can't just tell us your own view of things. You have to bring what other experts have said into this paper. You can't just tell me what you think. You have to see what the experts are saying. So the student, they've gone out, they've picked up what the experts are saying, and they put it in their paper exactly as we told them. But what they didn't do is cite it correctly. Didn't put the right citation. That's a learning experience. But we got to see, what does the student see? Now, look, if it's plain old everyday cheating, we can deal with it that way. But we need to see, is it really that? Or we need to see, are they just not understanding? Because often the students will see something much, much, much simpler than they do. Students don't understand the difference between financial aid and student accounts. Both of them deal with my money. What's the difference between these two offices? In our mind, this makes perfect sense, but in theirs, it may not. Slow it down, use simple stuff, see what the student sees. How do you keep it going? Easy. First, treat each other with a great service first. Start with your own colleagues. Start with, am I treating the people I work with great level of service? Honestly, if you treat each other with great service, it will automatically translate to good student service as well. Okay? Talk to each other, all the time. What's working? What's not working? Stuff doesn't work all the time. We need to talk about, If we had a meeting once a week and said, what's working here and what's not, make that list and say, okay, you fix this, you fix this, you fix this, and then come back next week and say, is it fixed yet? We would have fixed many things that are broken just because we're taking the time to talk about it. Talk to the students too. We need to find out, what are you experiencing, student? Because remember, we don't always see what they are seeing. So we need to do that. And then put energy into it. Those places we listed earlier in the meeting of Disney's, Chick-fil-A's, those places that are well known for their exceptional customer service, they make it important. It doesn't just happen because the product's good. Our product in higher ed is just about the best product you can possibly imagine. The transfer of knowledge from one human being to another. What is more on the side of right than that? It is a wonderful product, but we can still have good or not good customer service in a college because of how we prioritize this issue. You know, Chick-fil-A, there are many places that can cook food before you arrive, put them in a bag, and have you go on your way quickly. There are many restaurants that have that same exact product, but many of them don't have the service level of Chick-fil-A because they do not prioritize it the same. So it's not about the product, it's about the energy you put into it that is going to create a difference. Okay, so now we have some time for a little discussion, a little questions, things like that. So open in the chat, or Teresa, however we want to work this. We can do the chat. We can have people ask the question directly, which is, you know, what questions do you have about what we talked about? Or can you share an example of some situations that you have found that are kind of hard to deal with, or tricky situations of customer service on your own campus? And we can kind of talk about some of those things, put them in the chat, or what's the best way for people to ask a question or share feedback, Teresa?
Well, if you want to raise your hand and request to be taken off mute, I can do it that way. Or as Steve said, if you want to put it in the chat, I'm monitoring the chat as well. So whatever is easier for you to do, but we would love your participation.
Okay, fantastic. All right, let's take, all right, treat others how you want to be treated. Absolutely, always start with that way for sure. Now, let's talk about Ms. Revuelta. I think I can feel like bad customer service when you work in the gray. I think your example of the student conduct was a good example of the gray. Yeah, absolutely, the gray. Yeah, we're working in the gray a lot. You know, is it this way, or, you know, what's exactly the right way to do it? What's exactly the right way to handle it? It isn't always clear. But what is clear is that we can slow down, listen, empathize, and even take time. You know, don't, you know, my early example, don't get to that no too fast. Sometimes those fake no's, saying no when no isn't the only answer, that fake no is just a way to try to get the job done and move on. But sometimes we don't have that because it's not a real no. And then, you know, they're up at the president's office. Okay. When students are wrong on the SAP issue, okay, I've learned to slow down, be empathetic, and make it about the issue and not the person, and minimize matching emotion. Okay, very good example, Ms. Westry. So SAP, satisfactory academic progress, you know, it is a rule that we set up that basically says, you know, in our college, you have to be making progress toward your degree to continue getting student financial aid. And if you don't, we have to give you a warning, a probation, or maybe even cut you off. Students are often very, very confused by this. They're confused by the policy. They're confused by the appeal. And because there's a risk, you're not going to get money anymore, they can get emotional about it. So it is the perfect place where, you know, we could start over-explaining ourselves. No, you got it wrong. This is the way it works. You don't understand. We can start doing that thing with them, and then just the emotions escalate and escalate. But what is the student really seeing here? I came here. I don't have money. I did not make the grades that I need to for whatever reason, but I want to stay. That's what the student is thinking. And that's what we should. You want to stay. We also want you to stay. So let's approach it from that perspective first. Follow our rules, but we need to approach it from that perspective first. Very example. So take the time to listen with us. Yes, absolutely. Don't worry, it's complaint. So what? Take the time. Okay, how do you impact overall customer culture and improve customer service when it has historically not been a focus or priority? Okay, this is, I encounter this at a lot of campuses where it's, there is not a strong culture. Well, a couple of things. One, is it a leadership thing? Absolutely. Your world-class customer service, it starts at the top, leadership. But listen, I also have worked in situations where it was not a leadership. Okay. But I didn't like say, well, the leaders aren't caring about it. Neither do I. No, I want my own relationship to students to be one that is service oriented. I want my own relationship to be productive. So I start with me. Now, I hope that we can create an entire campus culture around this. But what I can do is start with me, because I also want my relationship and I want my work to be happier. I am happier when I'm serving. So I start with me if I can't get the whole. But I've also found out, I once worked in a place where the service level was not good. And it was frustrating. There was a lot of complaints, a lot of yelling, a lot of contention between students and the employees. And I thought to myself, I can't fix all of that right away, but I can influence it by starting with what I can do. And you know what? I had this idea in my mind that I will start with what I can do, and I will hope that everyone else will come up to where I am with this. And I was in a leadership position, but I wasn't the top leader at that time. So I said, you know what? I wonder if I can influence this from just what I'm going to do. And you know what? I feel I did. I really do. I feel like I started with my own service level, and I feel like pretty soon I saw the service level around me start to elevate. So you'll be amazed at how much you can do just on your own. You don't need to wait for the leader. You don't. Students sometimes say it's bad service because they didn't get what they wanted. How should I reconcile maintaining service? Well, the answer is no. Okay, good question. Sometimes the student does not get what they want. And sometimes I find that, taking that time to put context around it. This is why we're saying no. In clear, simple ways that they can understand, not jargon, not policy, not, federal regulations, all that stuff. That is just sounds like evasion to a student. Federal regulations say this, or campus policy says that, or the state says this, or regulations say that. None of us would want to hear that stuff, because all of that just sounds like evasion. What we want to hear is basic human concepts. Why can't I have what I'm looking for? Why can't I have it? And if federal rules and stuff are part of it, that's great, but don't start there. Start with the human experience first and give them a context around it. And then at the end of the day, they may still leave feeling, I didn't want that answer. But if you feel the no is the truth, you have done your job. You've done your job, okay? So let's talk a minute. Let the student know that you're there to assist them and take ownership. Absolutely. Own it. Own it, own it, own it. It's not me, it's that office down. Oh, good question, but it's that office down the hall. No. What is it you're looking for? That sounds important. Here's how that works at our college. Here's how we're going to get you that help. Okay? Absolutely. Tricky customer situation. When a student has received a refund for the semester, but a late course registration is added, financial aid adjustment, now they owe money again. Okay, so this has got to frustrate students to no end. Okay, I refunded your money, now I charged you money, I want that money back. Okay, students are mad, they're upset, they're confused. Wouldn't you be? I would. You gave me money back, but now I've added another course, you want the money me to pay you again? This is just confusing and work. So how do you deal with it? Okay, well, tricky. Maybe we can't fix the problem. Maybe it is going to be I give you a refund because the refund is due at a certain period of time, but now you've created more charges, so I need more money back. So just talk to people. Teresa, I can imagine that this situation is confusing and frustrating to you because I just gave you a $200 refund, and now I'm telling you, you owe me $150. And Teresa says, well, I don't have the $150, Steve, because I've already spent it with the refund you gave me. Why didn't you just keep it? I know, Teresa, and I understand what you're saying. I would feel just the way you do about that because I just gave you money back and I'm asking you to pay it back. So it is true that when we have a policy that if students have overpaid, we give them money back quickly. But then after that happened, you register for a new course and now there's tuition due. So, that's the way it works. We're trying to make sure we're not holding your money if it really belongs to you, but now you've taken a new charge, so we owe the tuition. So I know in the ideal situation, this would all have been much easier, but I do need to charge you that tuition. So can we talk about how we're going to get that tuition payment paid? Okay, tell them what's going on. It's frustrating to them, but see it from her perspective. Okay, small ways to give good service. Be available, absolutely. Be accessible, completely. Remember those examples for those of you who said, when I go into a place, they're paying attention to me. Yes, available, accessible, alert. From the beginning of the session, people said what makes a good service environment and the places they've been is people pay attention to me. Thank you, Dr. Russell. Pay attention. Make the customer, they're in there for a reason. It's about them. These are phenomenal examples. Okay. Do we have any other final questions before we conclude today's presentation?
Steve, I do have one. There was a good question. Do you offer this customer service training for colleges?
Oh, absolutely, Teresa. We do offer it for colleges. Like I said, I have done many of these sessions before. So let me first of all sign up for our newsletter, scan that QR code, and we'll make the presentation available after the today's session, so you can have all of this later. But yes, if you are working in a college or university and you want this training at your college, we've done it for many of I've done it hundreds of times for colleges. You can contact me here, and we can talk about what that means for scheduling it at your institution, and what our services, what we have available to us. But I do. So answer to question, Teresa, is yes, we absolutely can offer it at a campus. But I just want to recap real quickly and just say, I appreciate everybody being here for your attentiveness to this topic. And let me put the QR code back up. Yes. Yeah. Very good. QR code is back up, and we will send this back, but I've requested to get that QR code back up so you can sign up for our newsletters and our events, and we're on LinkedIn as well, Trellis Strategies. Customer service isn't really that hard. It's just something we have to put energy into and think, what is the student seeing, and do some basic things that create a relationship that is very, very sustainable. Follow our own rules. Make sure that if we say no, it's the truth. When the student comes to us, own it. Own it. Don't match emotions, work the problem. And finally, see the simple things the student is seeing and work from that perspective. You know what? I think those things work. Hope they work for you. Thank you very much for your service, for your attention, and happy holidays to all of you. Thank you very much.
Happy holidays. Thank you so much, Steve. Remember to complete the survey. It's about to pop up for you. Also, if you have any questions, Steve did put his email address there. You can contact him. And again, happy holidays. This webinar has been recorded, and I will send it out as soon as it's available. Thank you again. Thank you, Steve.